What is going on, Ive Warriors? It's your boy Edward V, and today we're going to talk about a study that has been getting a lot of press. This study is the 14-hour fast study. So how powerful is this individual study? Does it show how effective intermittent fasting can be even at a low number as 14, as opposed to a protocol that's more standard like 16 hours? I'm going to go ahead and break it down in this video. Stay tuned. Okay, jumping quickly into this video, a new study was released December 5th in the Journal of Cell Metabolism by Michael J. Wilkinson and colleagues. And in this study, what they did is they looked at 19 participants and they put them through a time-restricted eating system of 14 hours of fasting with 10 hours of eating. So a pretty obscure, a very different timing than the normal 16 hours, for example. And what they found was pretty interesting. Now, I would like to mention right off the bat that this study has its limitations. For example, it was a very small sample size of 19 people. On top of that, they logged their own entry of the foods that they were eating and the calorie intake using an application called My Circadian Clock. They were also told to eat ad libitum, or they didn't have any dietary restrictions whatsoever, and even the eating window itself was up to them. They just needed to make sure that they keep that window throughout a 12-week period to consistently fast for the same amount of time. So it was a very hands-off, not really controlled. They didn't have a control group to go up against this group, for example. So it was pretty hands-off. And that brings a lot of limitations, especially if you do not carry a control group. A control group is very important because you want to see what happens in similar circumstances, but using a different protocol. For example, if somebody's doing 10 hours of eating versus 14 hours of fasting, you want to see what happens versus a group that, for example, does 16 hours of fasting with 8 hours of eating. Or someone who's just reducing calories versus someone who's just doing 14 hours of fasting and 10 hours of eating. You want to have a control group with similar circumstances so you can get an idea of what can happen. And better yet, even having a crossover design can add more importance or more relevance to the study itself. Because remember, guys, all of these studies are individual single studies. This one in particular is just one study, so it's not even a meta-analysis about 14 hours of fasting. So it's hard to take from this and be able to apply it to a large group of people. But what was found in the study is still interesting, because although it is trying to tell you that there was weight that was reduced through this study, which is true, weight reduction did occur, keep in mind that the participants reduced their caloric intake. The good thing about it, though, is that it shows the power of intermittent fasting, creating invisible walls, making you intuitively just reduce your calories because you cannot eat outside of those invisible walls. And that is an inherent benefit to the entire protocol of intermittent fasting. No matter how many people want to belittle that benefit, oh, they're just eating less, so that's why. There's nothing special about intermittent fasting. No, the protocol of intermittent fasting is what helps people eat less. So yes, it is a special thing that comes with intermittent fasting, because a lot of people, when you can eat all day and you have no restrictions, no invisible walls, what ends up happening is you overeat very easily. But when you have a start and a stop time for eating, it does help you intuitively control your caloric intake, which inevitably helps you lose weight, which happened in this 12-week study. There was a reduction in calories by 14.47%, and the average body weight lost overall was about 5%. So it was effective in creating those invisible walls. But this is where it's important to have a control group, because was the weight loss because of the calorie restriction, or was the weight loss because of the intermittent fasting protocol? Now understand that calories matter. Calorie intake matters, and what intermittent fasting helps you do that separates it from the pack is partition calorie burning to target body fat over all other energy sources in your body, or things that can carry energy like muscle tissue, glycogen, etc. But as I mentioned, because there isn't a control group, it makes it pretty difficult. And the reason that I want to talk about this study is because that seems to be a red herring in my opinion, because the the true element of what this study is trying to show you based on the results is how cardiometabolic health can be improved with an intermittent fasting intervention, or time-restricted eating as it is defined in this study. There are estimated values that you can determine based on weight reduction and what percentage you will see improvement in a specific biomarker. And let me just break that down or explain it. For example, in this study, LDL cholesterol, which is considered the bad cholesterol, went down when they were doing this time-restricted eating. Now, LDL cholesterol does go down when you lose weight. However, because body weight average was lost by 5%, they estimated that scientifically a reduction of body weight of 5% will net about a 3 to 5% LDL cholesterol decrease. But what they saw was an 11% LDL cholesterol decrease, which means that inherently being in the fasted state or doing a fasted protocol can have its own inherent additional value to your health biomarkers that is independent of weight loss itself. One major argument against the intermittent fasting protocol from many experts is that, well, you're only seeing these benefits because you are reducing weight, and you're only reducing weight because you're reducing your calorie intake. Thus, it's okay to just reduce calorie intake and you will see the same effects happen as if you were doing intermittent fasting. Thus, there's no significant difference. That's the biggest argument. But study after study after study continues to show that intermittent fasting actually carries inherent hormonal shifts that help you when it comes to metabolic health. And this is an indicator of that. Seeing a higher percentage in the reduction of LDL over what is estimated based on the body weight that was lost, which means that that additional 5 or 6% that you're seeing that's improving the biomarkers has to do with something else other than just the weight loss. And that extra intervention is the time-restricted eating, or the intermittent fasting protocol. So the true element that is being displayed here from this study is not really about the weight loss, because there was a caloric reduction. Even though they were told not to reduce calories, they did reduce calories. So there was that. And then there was a weight loss that went in line with the caloric reduction. And these were participants that had metabolic syndrome, like metabolic health issues, that they were taking things like statins and things for their blood pressure. But all of those things were reducing at a higher percentage over the weight loss. So it wasn't in line with the weight loss reduction. It was greater percentages that were being seen through this time-restricted eating protocol. And yes, even as short as 14 hours, you can see benefits for sure, because the metabolic switchover happens from 8 to 12 hours. Now, if you were to increase that number, would it make it better? Would it compound those elements? Would you see better results? That is possible. Would you see a bigger drop off if you increase it from 14 to 16 hours? That is also possible, because one good thing that they saw in this study was that there was great adherence to the protocol and there was a very low amount of dropouts. And that's important, because adherence is the most important thing. How long can you actually adhere to this protocol? So this study was super special, but I don't think that it's special in the way that people think it is. Like, people are always really hyper focused on what's the weight loss. But like I said, this didn't have a control study connected to it. We didn't have a control group versus the actual intermittent fasting group to see the differences there. You have to be mindful of these limitations when you're looking at this for weight reduction, when you're just paying attention to this for weight reduction. I don't think the weight reduction in this particular study for the 14 hours of fasting was particularly strong, considering all of the limitations that come with this study. But what I do think is very telling, or something that we should look forward to, is those biomarker percentages based off of the weight loss that was seen. And this isn't the only study that has shown that regardless of the weight movement, even if the participants were eating to stay at the same weight, there are inherent benefits that come with simply being in a consistent fasted state on a daily basis. So I wanted to talk about this study because it was getting a lot of press. I wanted to break it down for you guys. Hopefully this video has helped you understand it a little bit more. And of course, as always, I want to thank my patrons from my Patreon, and I'm going to go ahead and put their names right up here. All right, and as always, guys, I'll see you on Sunday for another FAQ. Peace!